A young mother who lives on the streets with her daughter struggles to survive in a world that seems to forget them. On Christmas Eve, an unexpected encounter with a girl with autism will change her life in ways she never imagined. What begins as a simple gesture of kindness transforms into a deep connection that changes the destiny of all. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you are watching us from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you will hear in your life. Christmas Eve in New York City arrived with that characteristic end-of-year atmosphere, when the city seemed to split into two completely different worlds. On one side, the wealthy neighborhoods glittered with their luxurious decorations, illuminated trees, and families gathered around bountiful tables. On the other, there were those who walked the empty streets, carrying only the weight of their own survival and the hope that tomorrow might be a little less difficult than today. Kate knew this second world well. At 27, she had learned that life could change overnight, that certainties could crumble in a matter of weeks, and that sometimes all that was left was to keep moving forward, one step at a time. It had been 3 months since she and little Sophia, her 10-month-old daughter, had been living on the streets of the city. 3 months that felt like 3 years, marked by the chill of the early mornings, the hunger that gnawed at her stomach, and the indifferent gazes of people who hurried past, pretending not to see the reality unfolding right before their eyes. But Kate didn't allow herself to sink into sadness. She had made a silent promise to herself the day Sophia was born. She would never let her daughter feel a lack of love. Even if everything else was missing, love would never be. And it was with this thought that she faced each day, each night, each challenge that life on the streets imposed. Sophia slept peacefully in the sling tied to her mother's chest, protected from the cold December wind by a worn-out blanket Kate had gotten from a shelter weeks ago. The girl was small, fragile, but in her dark eyes she had that sparkle that only children possess, that ability to find joy in the simplest things. That Christmas Eve, Kate walked aimlessly through the streets of the Upper East Side. She hadn't planned on going there, but her feet had carried her almost instinctively to that area where the houses were enormous and the gardens looked like they were straight out of decorating magazines. Perhaps it was just curiosity, or perhaps it was that human desire, even if for a few minutes, to feel part of something bigger, something beautiful. The Christmas lights twinkled in the trees in the front yards, creating golden and silver reflections that danced on the sidewalk. Kate observed it all with a mixture of admiration and melancholy, but there was no bitterness in her heart. She didn't envy those people, didn't wish anyone ill. She just watched, like someone watching a movie they weren't a part of. It was then that she stopped in front of a particularly imposing mansion. The wrought iron gate was ajar, allowing a clear view of the front garden. There, under a starry sky and surrounded by lights of all colors, was a gigantic Christmas tree, still in the process of being decorated. And at the foot of that tree, completely alone, was a small girl with light blonde hair and very fair skin, who was struggling to hang ornaments on the lower branches. The child couldn't have been more than 6 years old, wearing an impeccable red dress and patent leather shoes that shone under the garden lights. But there was something in her movements that immediately caught Kate's attention. The girl would pick up an ornament, try to hang it, but her hands trembled slightly. The ornament would fall. She would pick up another, try again, and the same thing would happen. Frustration was visibly growing on her little face, and then, suddenly, the child began to rock her body back and forth repetitively while bringing her hands to her ears, as if trying to block out some sound that was bothering her. Kate recognized those signs immediately. She had worked as a daycare assistant before her life fell apart, and one of the children she had cared for had autism. She knew that this behavior indicated the girl was on the verge of a meltdown, overwhelmed by frustration and the feeling that nothing was going as it should. Without a second thought, Kate gently pushed the ajar gate and entered the garden. Her steps were careful, silent, so as not to startle the child. She approached slowly, crouched down at a safe distance, and said in a soft, calm voice, almost a whisper, "Hi, little one. Are you okay?" The girl stopped rocking immediately, but didn't take her hands from her ears. Her light, almost transparent eyes turned to Kate with a mixture of surprise and apprehension. Kate kept a gentle smile on her face and continued speaking in the same tranquil tone. "I saw you're trying to decorate this beautiful tree. Can I help you? You don't have to be afraid of me. I'm Kate, and this is Sophia." She pointed to the baby sleeping on her chest. "We were just passing by and saw you here. Would you like me to help you with the ornaments?" The girl slowly lowered her hands from her ears, still watching Kate attentively. Her gaze fixed on Sophia for a moment, and something in her expression softened. After a few seconds that felt like an eternity, she gave a slight nod. Kate smiled more broadly and approached carefully, picking up one of the ornaments that had fallen on the ground. "This is a very pretty gold ball, isn't it? Where do you think it would look good?" The girl pointed to a medium-sized branch, and Kate hung the ornament there delicately. "Perfect. It looks beautiful. You have great taste in decorating. What about the next one? Shall we choose together?" Little by little, the tension in the girl's body began to ease. She started picking up the ornaments and handing them to Kate, who hung them in the places indicated by the child. Sometimes, Kate would ask her opinion on colors and positions, always validating her choices and praising her aesthetic sense. The girl, who until then hadn't spoken a single word, began to visibly relax. Her movements became more fluid, less tense. And then, for the first time, she smiled. It was a small, shy, but genuine smile. Kate felt her heart warm inside her chest. It had been so long since she had felt that sensation of doing something truly important, something that mattered to someone besides her daughter. They worked together for almost half an hour, and when the last ornament was placed on the tree, the girl looked at the final result with shining eyes. Kate stepped back a bit and said, with genuine enthusiasm, "Wow, look how incredible it turned out. You did a wonderful job. This is the most beautiful Christmas tree I've ever seen." The girl looked at Kate, and then, in a soft, slightly hoarse voice, as if she wasn't used to speaking much, said, "Thank you, you helped me." Kate felt a lump in her throat. It was just a simple sentence, but it carried so much meaning. "Thank you for letting me be a part of it. It was very special for me. What's your name?" The girl hesitated for a moment before answering, "Isabel." Kate smiled and repeated the name with affection. "Isabel. What a beautiful name. It suits you." At that moment, Sophia stirred in the sling and began to wake up, making a small sound. Isabel was immediately fascinated, her eyes widening with curiosity. She took a hesitant step forward, and Kate noticed the girl's interest. "Do you want to meet Sophia? You can come closer. She's very calm." Isabel approached carefully, and after a few seconds of observation, reached out and lightly touched the baby's foot. Sophia opened her eyes and, upon seeing the new face before her, let out a sweet giggle. Isabel drew back a little, but she was smiling, an expression of pure joy on her face. The two stood there for a few more minutes, with Isabel watching Sophia with almost reverent attention, and Kate observing the scene with a heart full of a tenderness she couldn't explain. Then Isabel looked up at Kate and asked with a hopeful voice, "Will you come back tomorrow?" Kate felt a pang in her chest. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, didn't know if she would be welcome here again, didn't know if it would be safe to return. But, looking into those light eyes full of expectation, she couldn't say no. "Yes, I'll come back, I promise." Isabel smiled again, this time with more confidence, and then did something completely unexpected. She quickly approached Kate and hugged her, just for a second, before pulling away and running towards the house. Kate stood there for a moment, still processing what had just happened. She hadn't expected that hug, hadn't expected a girl who clearly had difficulties with physical contact to make such a spontaneous gesture of affection. She felt her eyes well up, but blinked quickly to push back the tears. It wasn't time to get emotional. It was time to find a place to spend the night. With Sophia still awake in her arms, Kate left the garden and returned to the dark, cold streets. Christmas Eve continued around her, with fireworks exploding in the distance and laughter echoing from the illuminated houses. She walked until she found a relatively sheltered park bench, where she sat and arranged the blanket around Sophia. The baby looked up at the starry sky with the infinite curiosity of small children, and Kate began to hum a lullaby that her own mother used to sing to her when she was a child. Sophia slowly closed her eyes, lulled by her mother's soft voice and the rhythmic movement Kate made as she gently rocked her. When the girl finally fell asleep, Kate rested her head on the back of the bench and looked up at the sky. She thought about Isabel, about that unlikely encounter, that unexpected connection that had formed between them. She also thought about the promise she had made to return the next day. She wanted to keep that promise. She wanted to see that little girl smile again. She wanted to feel useful, needed, important to someone. But at the same time, a part of her knew she was treading on dangerous ground. This was not her life. That mansion, that garden, that girl in the red dress and patent leather shoes, none of it was part of Kate's world. She was an intruder, a shadow that had momentarily crossed someone else's path, and shadows don't stay. They pass through. But as she snuggled on the cold bench, with Sophia sleeping peacefully on her chest, Kate allowed herself to dream just for this one night that maybe the world wasn't so divided after all. That maybe, just maybe, that encounter could mean something more than just a fleeting moment. The night was long and cold. Kate slept little, waking up several times to check if Sophia was warm enough, if there was anyone nearby who might pose a threat. Sleep never came completely when you were on the streets. It was always a state of constant alert, a superficial rest that never truly rejuvenated the body. But that night, despite all the discomfort, Kate dreamed. She dreamed of Christmas lights, of decorated trees, of the shy smile of a girl with light eyes. And when she woke up just before dawn, with the sky still tinged with pink and orange hues, she knew exactly what she would do that day. She would go back. She would keep the promise made to Isabel, not because she expected anything in return, not because she had some plan or hidden intention, but simply because she had made a promise, and promises were important, especially to children who, like Isabel, seemed to have few reasons to believe that people really keep their word. Kate rose from the bench carefully so as not to wake Sophia, straightened her clothes as best she could, and began to walk towards a public fountain where she could wash her face and try to present herself in a minimally decent way. She didn't have much, but she had her dignity. And if she was going back to that house, she wanted to at least be clean. She spent the rest of the morning wandering the city, always keeping an eye on the clock of a store or a public building. She wanted to let a few hours pass before returning, to give Isabel's family time to finish breakfast for the house's activity to calm down. Around noon, when the sun was high and the crisp winter air felt a bit warmer, Kate finally headed back to the Upper East Side. Her heart beat faster with every step that brought her closer to that mansion. What if Isabel had forgotten? What if the family wouldn't let her in? What if it had all been just an isolated moment that wasn't meant to be repeated? But when she reached the house's gate, now completely closed, and rang the bell with trembling hands, it was Isabel herself who came. Running through the garden, a huge smile on her face. Behind her, with slower steps and a cautious expression, came a tall man with dark hair and expensive clothes, who was clearly the owner of the house. John stopped a few feet away, observing Kate with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. His eyes quickly scanned her appearance, noting the worn clothes, the tired face, the baby in the sling. Kate felt exposed under his gaze, but held her head high. She had nothing to be ashamed of. Isabel, completely oblivious to the tension in the air, held Kate's hand through the bars of the gate and said excitedly, "Daddy, it's Kate. She helped me with the tree yesterday. I told you she would come back." John looked from his daughter to Kate and then back to Isabel. There was something on his face that Kate couldn't quite decipher. Surprise, perhaps, or disbelief, or maybe just exhaustion. He took a few more steps forward and asked in a controlled, polite, but distant voice, "Were you the one who helped my daughter last night?" Kate nodded, adjusting Sophia in the sling. "Yes, I was, sir. I was passing by, saw she was having trouble and asked if I could help. I didn't mean to intrude or cause any problems." John was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. Then, to Kate's surprise, a small smile formed on his lips. "Isabel hasn't stopped talking about you this morning." She said you were very kind, that you helped her decorate the whole tree, and that you promised to come back. He paused, as if evaluating the situation. Would you like to come in? We can talk better. Kate hesitated. She hadn't expected to be invited in. She didn't know if it was appropriate, if it was safe, if she should accept. But Isabel was pulling her hand with adorable insistence, and there was something in John's eyes, despite the caution, that seemed genuine. Okay, thank you. I don't want to be a bother. I just came to keep the promise I made to Isabel. John opened the gate and the three of them walked through the garden towards the house. Kate couldn't help but notice the stark difference between this world and hers. The lawn was perfectly manicured. The flowers were impeccably cared for. There was even a small fountain in the center of the garden. Everything here breathed order, comfort, security, things she hadn't experienced in months. They entered a spacious living room, decorated with good taste but without excess. John indicated a sofa for Kate to sit on, and she did so carefully, almost afraid of soiling the light-colored fabric with her street clothes. Isabel immediately sat next to her, watching Sophia with the same fascination as the day before. John offered water, juice, coffee. Kate accepted a glass of water, more out of politeness than necessity. He sat in the armchair opposite her and began to ask questions. Nothing invasive, nothing accusatory, just simple questions about how the encounter the night before had been, about how Kate had noticed Isabel was having difficulties, about what they had talked about. Kate answered everything honestly, without hiding her situation but also without dramatizing it. She just stated the facts. John listened attentively, and Kate realized that, little by little, the initial suspicion was giving way to something different. Respect, maybe, or admiration, or perhaps just relief. When Kate finished her story, John was silent for a moment, looking at his daughter who was playing with Sophia's little toes. Then he sighed deeply and said, his voice filled with emotion, Isabel was diagnosed with autism when she was 3. Since then it's been a constant challenge. She has difficulty connecting with people, expressing what she feels, dealing with frustrations. Last night, when I saw her decorating that tree all alone, my heart broke. I offered to help, but she pushed me away. Said she wanted to do it herself. I was watching from the window, seeing her try and fail. I was about to intervene when you showed up. He paused, and Kate saw his eyes glisten with unshed tears. And then something happened that I haven't seen in a long time. She smiled, a real smile. And when she came inside, she couldn't stop talking about you, about how kind you were, how you helped her. To you, it might have been just a simple gesture, but for me, for us, it was so much more. Kate felt a lump in her throat. She hadn't expected that emotional openness, that vulnerability from a man who, at first glance, seemed to have everything under control. I just did what anyone should do, Mr. John. I saw a child who needed help and I offered it. Nothing more. John shook his head. No, it was more than that. You saw what my daughter needed in that moment. You understood how to approach her, how to communicate with her. That's not common, and for that, I'd like to make you a proposition. Kate's eyes widened in surprise. John leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I work a lot. I spend most of the day out, in meetings, on business trips. Isabel stays with the housekeeper, who is a good person but has no experience with autism. She takes care of the basic needs, but she can't really connect with my daughter. I realized yesterday, watching the two of you together, that you have something special, something Isabel needs. Kate didn't know what to say. John continued, I would like to offer you a job, to take care of Isabel, to be with her, help her, teach her. It would be a job with a salary, a place to live, everything proper. You and your daughter would have a room here in the house, meals provided, and you would receive a monthly salary for your work. Kate felt the world spin around her. This couldn't be happening, it couldn't be real, it was too good to be true. She looked at Sophia, sleeping peacefully in her lap, and then at Isabel, who was watching her with those light, hopeful eyes. She thought of the cold nights, the hunger, the constant fear. She thought of everything she had lost and everything she could gain. And then, with a choked voice, she said, I accept. Yes, I accept. John smiled, and it was a genuine smile, full of relief. "Great. Then let's start today. I'll ask Maria to prepare a room for you and you can settle in. Tomorrow we can talk about the details, hours, responsibilities, all of that. For today, just rest and get familiar with the house." Kate could hardly believe what she was hearing. In less than 24 hours, her life had completely changed. She was off the streets, had found not only a roof and food, but also a purpose, a reason to wake up in the morning, a child who needed her as much as she needed a second chance. As John got up to make the necessary arrangements, Isabel approached Kate and whispered softly, "Are you going to stay? Forever?" Kate stroked the girl's blonde hair and answered with a smile, "Yes, I'm staying. Forever." The first few days in John's house were like living in a dream from which Kate feared she might wake up at any moment. The room she was given was larger than any place she had lived in recent years. It had a comfortable queen-sized bed, a new crib for Sophia that John had ordered the same day, a spacious wardrobe, and even a small armchair near the window, from which one could see the garden lit by the Christmas lights. Maria, the housekeeper who had been with the family for almost 10 years, received Kate with a mixture of curiosity and reserve. She was a middle-aged woman, friendly but discreet, who was clearly wondering who this young woman was who had arrived from the streets and now occupied one of the main guest rooms in the mansion. Kate was not offended by Maria's caution. She understood perfectly. After all, her story was unusual, even improbable. How many people go from being homeless to living in a mansion on the Upper East Side in a matter of hours? It was natural for there to be suspicion, questions, doubts about her true intentions, but Kate also knew that the only way to win everyone's trust was through her actions, not her words. So she focused on what really mattered: Isabel. From the very first day, she established a routine with the girl. They would wake up early, have breakfast together while John got ready for work, and then spend their mornings exploring activities that could help Isabel develop her social and emotional skills. Kate discovered that Isabel loved to draw. The girl had a natural talent for colors and shapes, and would spend hours sitting at the living room table with her colored pencils and sketchbooks. But what caught Kate's attention the most was the way Isabel drew. Every line was deliberate, every color chosen with care. There was no rush, no anxiety. It was as if, in those moments, Isabel found a peace she couldn't find anywhere else. Kate began to participate in these drawing sessions, sitting next to the girl and creating her own art. Sometimes they would talk, other times they would sit in comfortable silence. And little by little Isabel began to open up, sharing small things about her day, her likes, her fears. Sophia, in turn, became a constant and comforting presence in Isabel's life. The baby, at 10 months old, was in a charming phase, full of smiles and babbles. Isabel was fascinated by every sound Sophia made, by every movement, and something very beautiful began to happen. Isabel, who had difficulty expressing affection and connecting emotionally with people, started to show genuine affection for the baby. She would ask to help Kate change Sophia's diapers, to give her a bottle to rock the baby when she cried. And Kate, seeing this transformation happen before her eyes, felt her heart fill with gratitude and hope. John observed everything from a distance. He left for work early and came home late, often when Isabel was already asleep. But on the weekends, when he was home, he couldn't help but notice the changes in his daughter. Isabel was more communicative, more smiley, more present. She would seek out her father to show him her drawings, to tell him about the games she had played with Kate and Sophia, to share small details of her day. And John, who for years had felt helpless in the face of his daughter's difficulties, finally began to feel that there was hope, that maybe, just maybe, they could build a lighter, happier, more connected life. But along with the gratitude he felt for Kate, John also began to experience something he hadn't expected, an attraction that went beyond the professional, beyond thankfulness. He would find himself watching Kate as she played with the girls in the garden, noticing the way her eyes sparkled when Isabel achieved some small victory, the delicacy with which she treated Sophia, the infinite patience she showed in every situation. Kate was only 27, more than 10 years younger than him, and their lives were completely different. But there was something about her that stirred John in a way he couldn't ignore. An inner strength, a resilience, a genuine kindness that seemed to radiate from her every gesture. John tried to convince himself that these feelings were inappropriate. Kate was his employee, there to care for his daughter, not to be the object of his desires. Besides, she had been through terrible situations, was rebuilding her life, and the last thing she needed was emotional complications. So he kept his distance, treated her with professional cordiality, and avoided overly personal conversations. But at night, when he was alone in his room, John couldn't stop thinking about her. He thought about the courage Kate had shown in helping a strange child on Christmas Eve. He thought about everything she had lost, and how despite it all she hadn't lost her humanity. And he also thought about what it would be like to have someone like her by his side, not just as his daughter's caregiver, but as a companion, a life partner. Kate, for her part, was so focused on her new routine and her work with Isabel that she barely had time to think about anything else. But there were moments, usually at night when she put Sophia to sleep and was alone with her thoughts, when she allowed herself to reflect on the turn her life had taken. Just a few weeks ago, she was sleeping on park benches, enduring the cold, going hungry, living in constant fear. And now she was in a comfortable house with guaranteed food, with a job she loved, caring for a child who had won a special place in her heart. It was almost surreal, and along with the immense gratitude she felt, there was also a persistent fear that it was all temporary, fear that John would change his mind, fear that she would do something wrong and lose everything again. But as the weeks went by, this fear slowly subsided. John never showed any signs of dissatisfaction with her work. On the contrary, he frequently praised Isabel's progress, thanked Kate for her dedication, and was always respectful and considerate. Maria also opened up over time, and the two women developed a harmonious partnership in the house. Maria took care of the cleaning, cooking, and general chores, while Kate dedicated herself exclusively to Isabel. And Sophia, growing quickly, became smarter and more adorable each day, winning the hearts of everyone in the house, including John, who would sometimes hold her and play with her on the weekends. It was on a January afternoon, when the winter chill was at its peak and everyone sought refuge indoors, that something significant happened. Kate was in the living room with Isabel and Sophia, sitting on the rug near the fireplace, which provided a generous warmth. Isabel was drawing in her sketchbook, Sophia was playing with some colorful toys John had bought, and Kate was reading a book she had found in the house's library. It was a moment of perfect peace, the kind that gets etched in your memory forever. Suddenly, Isabel looked up from her drawing and said in her soft voice, "Kate, can I ask you a question?" Kate immediately closed the book and gave the girl her full attention. "Of course you can ask anything." Isabel hesitated for a moment, biting her lower lip as she always did when thinking about something important. "Why don't you have a house?" The question took Kate by surprise in all. This time, Isabel had never asked about her past, about how she had ended up there. Kate took a deep breath and decided to be honest. "I used to have a house, Isabel. I had a job too, and I was doing okay. But sometimes life throws you a curveball, you know. I lost my job, I couldn't pay the rent, and I ended up having to leave. And when you have nowhere to go, you end up living on the street, like I was when I met you." Isabel processed the information in silence, her gaze returning to her drawing. After a few seconds, she asked again, "And now you have a house here with us?" Kate smiled tenderly. "Yes, I do. Thanks to you and your dad, Sophia and I have a home now, and I'm very grateful for it." Isabel nodded, seeming satisfied with the answer. Then she said something that made Kate's heart skip a beat. "I like you. I want you to stay forever. I don't want you to go away." Kate felt her eyes fill with tears, but she blinked them back quickly. She moved closer to Isabel and hugged the girl affectionately. "I like you very much too, Isabel, and I don't plan on going anywhere. I'm going to stay right here taking care of you, for as long as you want me to." Isabel returned the hug, something she rarely did, and held on for a few seconds before pulling away and going back to her drawing. But Kate noticed a small smile on the girl's face and knew that moment had been special for both of them. That evening, when John returned from work, Isabel ran to him with the drawing she had made that afternoon. It was a drawing of 4 people, a tall man, a woman with long hair, a blonde girl, and a baby. They were all holding hands, smiling, with a large house in the background and a bright yellow sun in the sky. John looked at the drawing attentively, feeling a lump form in his throat. "This is beautiful, sweetie. Who are these people?" Isabel pointed to each figure. "This is you, Daddy. This is Kate. This is me. And this is Sophia. It's us, our family." John felt as if the floor had disappeared from under his feet. He looked at Kate, who was on the other side of the room with Sophia in her arms, and saw that she too was speechless. Isabel didn't fully understand the weight of what she had said, but for John and Kate, those words carried a profound meaning. Isabel, in her innocence and sincerity, had verbalized something that neither of them had the courage to admit, that what they were building there, in that house, went far beyond a professional relationship. It was a genuine connection, a family structure that was forming naturally, organically. John thanked his daughter for the drawing, said he would put it in a special place, and then retreated to his office, needing a moment alone to process everything. Kate, for her part, put Sophia to bed early that night and sat in the armchair in her room, looking out at the darkness of the garden through the window. She thought about everything that had happened since that Christmas Eve. She thought about how her life had changed, how she had found not only a roof and food, but also purpose and belonging. She thought about Isabel, how the girl had captured her heart, how she felt more connected to this special child every day. And she also thought about John. He was a good man, she knew that. Hard-working, dedicated, loving with his daughter. But there was something about him that Kate perceived between the lines, a deep sadness he tried to hide, a loneliness that all the money in the world couldn't fill. She wondered about Isabel's mother, about what had happened to John's marriage, about why he was raising his daughter alone. But these were questions Kate didn't feel comfortable asking. It wasn't her place, not her right. She was there to take care of Isabel, not to meddle in John's personal life. So she kept her curiosities to herself and continued doing what she did best, dedicating herself completely to the girl's well-being. The days continued to pass in a comfortable and predictable routine. Kate would wake up early, prepare breakfast for Isabel, take her to school when necessary, pick her up at the end of the day, help with homework, play in the garden, and read stories before bed. And in each of these activities, she put all her love and dedication. But then on a February night, as winter began to show signs of its eventual end, something happened that completely changed the dynamic of the house. It was a particularly stormy night, with loud thunder and heavy rain beating against the windows. Kate was in her room with Sophia, who had woken up scared by the noise when she heard screams coming from Isabel's room. She ran there with Sophia in her arms and found Isabel in the midst of a full-blown meltdown. The girl was in the corner of the room, huddled, with her hands over her ears, rocking her body violently and screaming. The sound of the thunder had completely dysregulated her, and she was clearly in a panic. Kate handed Sophia to Maria, who had appeared worried in the hallway, and approached Isabel calmly. She knew she couldn't touch the girl at that moment. That physical contact during a meltdown could make things worse. So she sat on the floor at a safe distance and began to speak in a soft, rhythmic voice. "Isabel, I'm here. You're safe. It's just a storm. It will pass. Breathe with me, slowly. In through your nose, hold, out through your mouth. Let's do it together." Kate began to breathe in an exaggerated way so Isabel could see and hear. In, hold out, in, hold out. Slowly, very slowly, Isabel began to calm down. Her screams subsided, turned into sobs, and finally ceased. John, who had arrived home in the middle of the storm and run upstairs upon hearing the screams, stopped at the bedroom door and watched the scene. Kate was still on the floor, breathing rhythmically, and Isabel had started to imitate her. In, hold, out. In, hold, out. After a few minutes, Isabel finally took her hands from her ears and looked at Kate with tear-filled eyes. Kate opened her arms, and this time Isabel accepted the hug. Throwing herself into her arms and crying uncontrollably, Kate held her tightly, stroking her hair and whispering words of comfort. "It's okay, my love. You're so brave. The storm is passing. You're safe here with me." John felt tears run down his face. He had witnessed several of Isabel's meltdowns over the years, but he had never seen anyone manage to calm her so quickly and effectively. Usually the meltdowns lasted for hours, leaving Isabel exhausted and him completely helpless. But here was Kate, a woman who had entered their lives just a few weeks ago, managing to do what he had never been able to, bring his daughter back from the abyss of a crisis with safety and love. When Isabel finally calmed down completely and fell asleep in Kate's arms, John entered the room and helped place her in bed. They covered her with a blanket, left a nightlight on, and silently left the room. In the hallway, John finally let his emotions surface. He leaned against the wall and began to cry softly, covering his face with his hands. Kate, not knowing exactly what to do, approached and gently touched his arm. "John, it's okay. She's okay now." John shook his head, trying to control his tears. "It's not just that, it's that I've never been able to do what you just did. I'm her father, I should know how to help her, but every time she has a meltdown I feel completely lost. And you, who have known her for such a short time, managed to calm her in a way I never could. It makes me feel like a failure as a father." Kate's heart ached. She took both of John's hands, forcing him to look at her. "You are not a failure, John. You are a wonderful father who loves his daughter more than anything in the world. Isabel knows that, I know that. Anyone who sees you together knows that. The fact that I managed to calm her down today doesn't diminish in any way what you do for her every single day. I have experience with autistic children. I worked with them before. You don't have that experience, but you have something much more important. You have love, and it's that love that will make all the difference in her life." John looked into Kate's eyes, and in that moment, something shifted between them. No words were spoken. There were no obvious gestures, but they both felt it. A deep connection, an attraction that went beyond the physical, beyond the rational. John took a step back, letting go of Kate's hands and wiping his face. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have broken down like that. It's been a tough night." Kate shook her head. "You don't need to apologize. We all have our vulnerable moments, and it's okay." John forced a small smile. "Thank you, Kate, for everything, for being here, for taking care of Isabel, for being the incredible person you are." He paused as if wanting to say more, but then just nodded and headed to his room. Kate stood there for a few minutes, processing everything that had happened. She went back to her room, checked that Sophia was still sleeping peacefully, and lay down on the bed. But sleep did not come easily that night. She thought about John's gaze, the way he had held her hands, the raw emotion in his voice, and she realized, with a mixture of fear and excitement, that something was growing between them, something that shouldn't be there, something that complicated the already delicate situation they were in. She was his employee, there to care for his daughter, not to develop feelings for him. But the heart doesn't obey reason, and Kate knew she was beginning to feel something for John that went far beyond gratitude or professional respect. She was falling in love, and that, she knew, could put everything at risk, everything she had gained, all the stability she had found, all the happiness Isabel was experiencing. In the following days, Kate tried to maintain an emotional distance from John. She was cordial, professional, but avoided overly personal conversations. John, for his part, seemed to be doing the same. They greeted each other politely in the morning, exchanged information about Isabel when necessary, but there was a tension in the air that wasn't there before. Maria noticed the change, but said nothing. She just observed with her watchful eyes, and Kate was sure the housekeeper had realized what was happening. Isabel, thankfully, didn't notice a thing. She continued in her own world, more open, more communicative, happier each day. And it was for her, Kate reminded herself, that it was all worth it. It was for Isabel. That she needed to maintain control, to maintain professionalism, to not let inappropriate feelings compromise the incredible work they were doing together. But then, on a sunny Saturday at the end of February, John made a decision that would change everything again. He woke up early, prepared breakfast for everyone, and announced they were going to spend the day at the beach. Isabel, who loved the sea but rarely had the chance to go, was ecstatic. Kate hesitated, thinking it might not be appropriate for her to accompany them on a family outing, but John insisted. "You're part of this family, Kate, and Isabel is much calmer when you're around. Please come with us." And so a few hours later, the four of them were in the Hamptons, enjoying the sun, the sea breeze, and the feeling of freedom that only a day at the beach can provide. Isabel played in the sand with Sophia, building castles and collecting seashells. John and Kate stayed nearby, supervising but also relaxing, letting the sea breeze carry away some of their accumulated tensions. At one point, Isabel asked John to take her to play in the waves. He readily agreed, and the two of them headed towards the sea, leaving Kate with Sophia on the sand. Kate watched the father and daughter playing in the waves, laughing, having fun, and felt a wave of emotion wash over her. The scene was so beautiful, so pure, so full of love. And she was there, part of it all. No longer as an outside observer, but as someone who belonged, who had a place, who was important. When John and Isabel came back from the water, everyone was hungry. They had a picnic right there on the sand, eating sandwiches and fruit that Maria had prepared, drinking cold coconut water, and talking about simple, light things. And for the first time since the night of the storm, the tension between John and Kate seemed to dissipate a little. They started talking naturally again, laughing together, sharing knowing glances when Isabel did something adorable. In the late afternoon, as the sun began to set on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Isabel fell asleep in Kate's lap, exhausted but happy. John looked at the three of them and felt his heart overflow with a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Happiness, pure happiness, without reservations, without fear. And he knew in that moment that he could no longer deny what he felt. He could no longer pretend that Kate was just his daughter's caregiver. She was so much more than that. She was the person who had brought light back into his house, who had taught his daughter to smile again, who had made him believe that it was possible to start over. And he was in love with her. Completely, hopelessly in love. The days following the beach trip were marked by a subtle but significant shift in the household. Dynamic. John started coming home from work earlier, taking advantage of the last hours of the afternoon to be with Isabel before she went to bed. He participated more in his daughter's activities, sitting beside her as she drew, listening attentively to her stories about the day, playing in the garden when the weather permitted. And in all these moments, Kate was present, not as a distant observer, but as an integral part of those instances. John realized her presence made everything lighter, more natural. Isabel was more at ease, more communicative when Kate was around. And he himself felt better, more complete, when the four of them were together. Maria observed everything with a discreet smile on her face. She had worked in that house long enough to know John very well, to know that he had suffered greatly from the end of his marriage and the challenges of raising Isabel alone. Seeing this good man finally starting to open up again to the possibility of happiness filled her heart with joy. And Kate, that young woman who had arrived with nothing and earned such a special place in this family, had her full admiration. Maria saw how hard Kate worked, how she dedicated herself to Isabel with genuine love, how she treated Sophia with infinite tenderness. And she also saw, because she was an experienced and observant woman, the way Kate looked at John when she thought no one was watching. With that mixture of admiration, gratitude, and something deeper that she tried to hide. One morning in March, as autumn began to announce itself with cooler temperatures and clear skies, John woke up with a decision made. He could no longer continue pretending he didn't feel what he felt. He could no longer live in that constant tension, in that game of glances and unspoken words. He needed to talk to Kate, to be honest about his feelings, even at the risk of being rejected or making the situation even more complicated. But before that, he needed to tell her something he had kept to himself since the day he met her. He needed to talk about Helena, Isabel's mother, about the marriage that had ended so painfully, about the wounds that still hadn't completely healed. That night, after Isabel had gone to sleep and Sophia was quiet in her crib, John asked Kate to talk with him in the living room. She agreed, despite the nervousness she felt. They sat on the sofa, maintaining a respectful distance, and John began to speak. His voice was low, heavy with emotion, but firm. He told her how he had met Helena at a business conference, how they had fallen in love quickly and married after only a year of dating. He told her about the joy of Isabel's arrival, how they had felt blessed with that beautiful, light-eyed girl. But then came the diagnosis. Isabel was 2 when they started to notice something was different. She didn't respond. To her name, avoided eye contact, had frequent and intense meltdowns. After months of appointments and tests, the confirmation came: autism. John paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. Helena couldn't handle the diagnosis. She had always idealized a perfect motherhood, a daughter who would meet all the developmental milestones on schedule, a family that fit social norms. When she realized Isabel would be different, that she would require special care, extra patience, constant dedication, she started to pull away. First emotionally, becoming distant and cold, then physically, spending more and more time away from home, inventing commitments and trips, until when Isabel was 3, Helena simply left. She left a letter saying she couldn't live that life anymore, that she wasn't strong enough to be the mother of a special needs child, that she needed to start over somewhere else. And she disappeared. She didn't keep in touch, didn't ask for news, didn't visit her daughter. She just erased that part of her life as if it had never existed. Kate listened in silence, feeling tears stream down her face. The pain in John's voice was palpable, even after all these years. She imagined how difficult it must have been for him, raising a daughter alone, dealing with the challenges of autism without support, carrying Helena's rejection like an invisible but constant weight. "How did you do it, John? How did you manage to go on after something like that?" John looked at her, his eyes also moist. "I had to. Isabel needed me. And I love her more than anything in this world. She didn't choose to have autism, didn't ask to be different, and I would never abandon her for it. So I learned. I read everything I could on the subject, sought out the best specialists, tried to understand her world so I could help her in the best way possible. It wasn't always easy. There were times I thought I couldn't take it. But I look at her now and see how much she's grown, how incredible she is, and I know every second of effort was worth it." Kate moved closer and took John's hand. "She's a wonderful girl, John, and you are an exceptional father. What Helena did was cowardly and selfish, but it ended up being better for Isabel, because she has you, who loves her unconditionally, who never gives up on her, who is always there, and that's worth so much more than anything else." John squeezed Kate's hand, feeling a deep connection in that simple gesture. "I told you all this because I want you to understand why I'm so cautious, so careful. After what happened with Helena, I built walls around myself. I promised myself I would never let anyone into Isabel's life again unless I was absolutely sure that person would stay. Because she has already suffered one rejection, has already been abandoned by someone who should have loved her unconditionally. I can't let that happen again." Kate nodded, understanding perfectly. "And for that very reason I need to tell you something that maybe I shouldn't, something that might complicate everything, but that I can't keep to myself any longer." He paused, gathering courage. "Kate, I'm falling in love with you. In fact, I think I'm already in love. I know it's not appropriate. I know you're here to take care of Isabel. I know our situation is complicated. But I can't pretend I don't feel what I feel anymore. You brought light back into this house, not just for Isabel, but for me too. You made me believe it's possible to start over, that it's possible to be happy again. And I needed to tell you this, even at the risk of making everything awkward between us." The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Kate stared at John with wide eyes, processing his words. Her heart was beating so fast she was sure he could hear it. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind at once. The gratitude she felt for everything John had done for her and Sophia. The love she had for Isabel. The fear of losing everything again if things didn't work out. But above all, there was a feeling she could no longer deny. She was also in love with John. She had fallen for him slowly, without realizing it, through his small gestures of kindness, the dedicated way he cared for Isabel, the vulnerability he had shown on the night of the storm, and now again in sharing his story. Finally, Kate found her voice. "John, I have feelings for you too. And it scares me a lot, because everything I have now, everything Sophia has, is thanks to you. I don't want you to think my feelings come from gratitude or dependence. It's not that. It's something genuine, something that grew naturally, but at the same time, I'm so afraid of messing everything up. What if it doesn't work out? What if we get involved and then discover it was a mistake? Isabel will suffer, Sophia will suffer, we'll all suffer." John moved closer, still holding her hand. "I understand your fear, Kate. I have the same fears, but I also know that some things in life are worth the risk. And what I feel for you is worth any risk, but you don't have to give me an answer now. You don't have to decide anything today. I just needed to be honest with you about my feelings. The rest, we'll figure out together, in due time." Kate looked deep into John's eyes and, in that moment, allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work. She leaned in slowly, giving him time to pull back if he wanted. And then their lips met in a soft, delicate, emotion-filled kiss. It was a kiss that sealed something between them, a silent promise that they were willing to try, to risk, to build something together. When they parted, they were both smiling, their eyes shining with tears and hope. John caressed Kate's face tenderly. "Let's take it slow, okay? No rush, no pressure. Let's just let things happen naturally." Kate agreed, feeling a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. In the following days, everything seemed to take on a new color. John and Kate began to date discreetly, keeping their displays of affection away from Isabel's eyes for the time being. They didn't want to confuse the girl or create expectations before they were sure the relationship was solid. But there was a new lightness in the air, a complicity that made every interaction richer, more meaningful. Maria noticed the change immediately, and when she was alone with Kate at one point, gave her a tight hug and whispered, "I'm so happy for you two. You deserve to be happy. And that man upstairs has needed someone like you for a long time. Take good care of him and our Isabel." The weeks passed in a kind of golden haze of happiness. John came home earlier and earlier, making the most of his time with his family. Yes, family, because that's how he had started, to see it all. Kate was no longer just Isabel's caregiver. She was his companion, his partner, the person with whom he shared joys and worries. And Sophia, that adorable baby, who was already starting to take her first steps, had become like a second daughter to him. Isabel, for her part, blossomed more each day. She had just turned 7, and the difference between the isolated, disconnected child of months ago and the girl she was now was astounding. She talked more, sought interaction, showed affection in ways she never had before. It was on an April afternoon, as spring had fully settled over New York, that Isabel asked a question that took John and Kate completely by surprise. The four of them were in the garden, John helping Isabel plant flowers in a bed they had prepared together, while Kate watched with Sophia in her lap. Suddenly Isabel stopped what she was doing, looked at Kate and asked with the disarming sincerity of children, "Kate, can you be my mum? For real?" Kate felt the air leave her lungs. John froze, not knowing what to say. The silence stretched for a few seconds that felt like hours. Isabel continued, not understanding the magnitude of her question. "It's just that Sophia has you for a mum, and I wanted to have a mum too. You take care of me, you play with me, you help me when I'm sad. Isn't that what mums do?" Kate knelt to be at Isabel's eye level, her eyes welling up. "Isabel, I love taking care of you. You are a very special girl to me. And yes, I do those things because I love you very much. But being a mom is a complicated thing. It involves a lot of other things." Isabel frowned thoughtfully. "But don't you love me like you love Sophia?" Kate squeezed the girl's hand. "I love you and Sophia in different ways, but equally strong. You are both very important to me." John, who had finally recovered from the initial shock, approached and knelt beside them. "Isabel, Kate cares about you very much, and I know she will always be here for you. What do you say we talk more about this another time, when we're all calmer?" Isabel seemed to accept that answer, turning her attention back to the flowers she was planting. But the question hung in the air, heavy and significant. That night, after Isabel was asleep, John and Kate sat down to talk again. "Her question took you by surprise too, didn't it?" John said. Kate nodded. "Completely. I wasn't expecting that. I don't even know what to say to her." John took a deep breath. "Kate, I know we've only been together for a short time. I know we're still getting to know each other, building this relationship. But Isabel's question made me think. It made me realize that you're already so much more than a caregiver to her. You're already a mother figure. And maybe it's time we start thinking about the future more seriously." Kate looked at him attentively. "What are you saying, John?" He took her hands. "I'm saying I want you in my life, in our life. Not just as a girlfriend, but as an official part of this family. I want Isabel to be able to call you Mom without doubts or insecurities. I want Sophia to grow up seeing us both as her parents. I want to build a life with you, Kate. A real life." Kate felt tears stream freely down her face. "John, I want that too, more than anything. But I'm afraid I'm not enough. I'm afraid I won't be able to fill the void Helena left. I'm afraid I'll disappoint you and Isabel." John caressed her face tenderly. "You've already filled all the voids, Kate. You've done more for Isabel in a few months than Helena did in all the years she was here, and it's not about being perfect. It's about being present, about caring, about loving. And you do all of that naturally. You are already the mother Isabel needs. All that's left is to make it official." Kate hugged him tightly, letting her tears soak his shoulder. She thought about everything she had been through, how she had gotten here, from a life on the streets, without prospects, without hope, to this moment, being loved and wanted as part of a family. It was almost impossible to believe, but it was happening, and she was going to let herself believe. She was going to let herself be happy. The following months were ones of adjustment and adaptation. John and Kate decided to wait a little longer before making anything official, wanting to be sure Isabel was ready for the changes. But the girl, in her childlike wisdom, had already accepted Kate as part of the family long ago. She began calling Kate Mom spontaneously, without any prompting, and every time it happened, Kate's heart overflowed with love and gratitude. Sophia, who was now over a year old and starting to speak her first words, also adopted John as a father figure, running to him with open arms every time he came home. In June, as summer returned with its warm, long days to New York, John organized a special dinner. He invited only the closest people, Maria, who had become much more than a housekeeper. She was practically family. And Mrs. Eleanor, John's mother, who had kept her distance in the first months after his separation from Helena, but now visited regularly and had been completely charmed by Kate and Sophia. During dinner, while Isabel drew quietly and Sophia played in her playpen, John stood up and asked for everyone's attention. His heart was racing, his hands were slightly sweaty, but he knew the time was right. "Kate," he began, looking directly at her, "a few months ago you came into my life, into our lives, in a completely unexpected way. I wasn't looking for anyone. I didn't think it was possible to fall in love again. But you arrived, with your strength, your kindness, your genuine love, and you changed everything. You transformed Isabel, brought joy back into this house, taught me that it's possible to start over, and I can no longer imagine my life without you." He paused, took a small box from his pocket, and knelt before Kate. She brought her hands to her mouth, already crying, already knowing what was coming next. "Kate, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, mother to Isabel and Sophia, my partner through it all? Will you build this future with me?" Kate could barely speak through her tears. "Yes, John, yes, I will. I want all of that with you." The room erupted in applause and tears of joy. Maria was beaming, Mrs. Eleanor was crying emotionally, and Isabel, who understood the significance of the moment, ran to hug John and Kate, saying excitedly, "Now you're going to be my mum forever, right?" Kate picked her up and held her tight. "Forever, my love. Forever." John placed the ring on Kate's finger, a simple but beautiful ring that sparkled under the chandelier light. And then the three of them, John, Kate, and Isabel, hugged tightly, with Sophia joining the hug soon after, creating a picture that would be etched in everyone's memory forever. The picture of a family, a true family, built not just on blood ties but on choice, on love, on commitment. Preparations for the wedding began immediately after the proposal. John wanted to do something simple yet meaningful, something that would celebrate the love they had built and the family they had become. Kate completely agreed. She didn't want a big party, didn't need ostentation or luxury. What mattered was being surrounded by the people she loved, celebrating this special moment that would mark the official start of her new life. They decided the ceremony would be in September, in the early autumn, when the leaves would begin to turn and the weather would be mild. It would be in the garden of the house, the very same garden where Kate had met Isabel on that life-changing Christmas Eve. Isabel was absolutely thrilled with the idea of the wedding. She had been asked to be the flower girl and took this responsibility very seriously. Kate took her to choose a dress, and the girl fell in love with a white model with light pink details that perfectly matched her skin tone and blonde hair. Sophia, who was now over a year old and walking with increasing confidence, would be the other flower girl wearing a little dress in the same style. The two of them together would be an adorable sight, Kate thought, her heart warming at the idea. Mrs. Eleanor offered to help with all the preparations, and she and Maria worked in partnership to ensure every detail was perfect. The garden was redone, new flowers were planted, and delicate lights were installed to create a magical atmosphere. But not everything was rosy in the months leading up to the wedding. In July, something happened that tested the strength of John and Kate's relationship and brought to the surface fears and insecurities they both thought they had overcome. Helena returned. She showed up unannounced, ringing the doorbell on a Saturday morning when John was in his office working and Kate was playing with the girls in the living room. Maria answered the door and, upon recognizing the woman standing there, froze for a few seconds before calling Kate. When Kate got to the door and saw Helena, she knew immediately who it was. The woman in front of her was impeccably dressed, in designer clothes and discreet but expensive jewelry. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She had the appearance of someone who had everything under control, everything perfectly in order. "Can I help you?" Kate asked politely, despite the nervousness she felt. Helena looked her up and down with an expression that was hard to decipher. "I'm Helena, Isabel's mother. I need to speak with John." Kate felt her stomach tighten. "Of course, I'll get him. Please wait here." She didn't invite Helena in, and the woman didn't ask. Kate went to the office and found John focused on some papers. When she told him who was at the door, she saw the color drain from his face. "Helena, here, after 4 years." John stood up abruptly, running his hands through his hair in a nervous gesture. Kate touched his arm. "Do you want me to stay with you when you talk to her?" John shook his head. "No, it's better if I handle this alone, but thank you for offering." He went downstairs and found Helena at the door. She tried to smile, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, John. I know it's a surprise, me showing up like this, but we need to talk." John crossed his arms, maintaining a physical and emotional distance. "About what, Helena? You abandoned your daughter 4 years ago. You didn't send word, didn't ask how she was, didn't care about anything. And now you show up here wanting to talk?" Helena looked down, seeming genuinely ashamed. "I know I was a coward. I know I made a terrible mistake, but I've changed, John. I went to therapy, worked on myself, and now I'm ready to be the mother Isabel deserves. I want to be part of her life again. I want to make up for lost time." John felt a cold anger rise up his spine. "You think you can just show up here after 4 years and everything will go back to normal? Isabel doesn't know you, Helena. To her, you don't exist. And now I have someone in my life, someone who truly loves Isabel, who is here every day, who takes care of her when she's sick, who celebrates her achievements, who calms her down when she has meltdowns, someone who deserves to be called mother far more than you do." Helena was visibly shaken. "Is it that woman who answered the door? The nanny?" John's blood boiled. "She is not the nanny. She is Isabel's caregiver, my fiancée, and she will be my wife in 2 months. and she is more of a mother to Isabel than you ever were or ever will be." Helena took a step back, clearly not expecting that reaction. "John, I know you're angry and you have every right to be, but legally I am still Isabel's mother. I still have rights." John narrowed his eyes. "You gave up those rights when you abandoned your daughter, and if you try to cause any trouble, if you try to destabilize the life I've built for her, I will fight with everything I have to make sure you don't get anywhere near her. Isabel is happy now. She has a family that loves her. I will not let you destroy that." Helena seemed to want to argue, but something in John's expression made her back down. She just nodded slowly. "I understand, but I'll be back, John. I'll prove that I've changed, that I deserve a second chance." And then she turned and walked away. John stood at the door for a few minutes, processing what had just happened. His heart was racing, his breathing was ragged. When he finally went back inside, he found Kate waiting in the living room, a worried expression on her face. What did she want? John sat down next to her on the sofa and told her everything. Kate listened in silence, feeling a mixture of fear and anger. Fear that Helena could actually cause problems, that she could destabilize the family they had built, and anger that this woman, who had abandoned her own child, would now return wanting to claim rights she herself had discarded years ago. "Do you think she'll really come back? Do you think she can cause trouble for us?" John held Kate's hands firmly. "I don't know what she'll do, but what I do know is that I won't let anything or anyone destroy our family. Isabel is my priority, and so are you and Sophia. We'll face this together, whatever comes." Kate nodded, trying to believe his words, but at night, alone in her room putting Sophia to sleep, she couldn't stop the dark thoughts from invading her mind. What if Helena really had changed? What if she could prove she deserved a second chance? What if Isabel wanted to know her biological mother? Where would that leave Kate? Would she be discarded, replaced by the real mother? All the fears she thought she had overcome returned with full force, and she spent the night practically sleepless, staring at the ceiling and trying to calm her racing heart. In the following days, the tension in the house was palpable. John spent more time in his office, making calls to lawyers, consulting about his rights and how to protect Isabel if Helena decided to really cause trouble. Kate tried to maintain normalcy in Isabel's routine, but the girl, always perceptive, noticed that something was different. "Kate, are you sad?" she asked at one point while they were drawing together. Kate forced a smile. "No, my love. I'm just a little tired. But I'm okay." Isabel didn't seem convinced, but didn't press. She just moved closer and hugged Kate, giving her that silent comfort that is sometimes worth more than 1,000 words. 2 weeks after Helena's appearance, a letter arrived from a lawyer. Helena was indeed trying to re-enter the picture, claiming she had undergone psychological treatment and was now fit to exercise her maternity. She was requesting supervised visits to begin rebuilding her relationship with Isabel. John was furious. How dare she? How can she think she can just come back and demand access to Isabel after everything? John's lawyer explained that, unfortunately, the law often favored parental rights, and it would be difficult to completely deny Helena's request, especially if she could prove she was stable and capable. The best strategy would be to agree to supervised visits, document everything, and ensure Isabel had all the necessary psychological support during this process. Kate felt her world crumble when John told her about the decision. She knew it was unfair, that it was painful, but she also understood that legally there wasn't much they could do. The first visit was scheduled for the following week, in a neutral setting, with a child psychologist specializing in autism present. John didn't want to tell Isabel ahead of time, fearing it would cause unnecessary anxiety. But Kate thought it would be worse if the girl were caught by surprise. So the night before the visit, she sat down with Isabel and tried to explain as simply and honestly as possible. "Isabel, tomorrow you're going to meet someone special. She's a woman who knew you when you were a baby, but she had to go away. Her name is Helena." Isabel frowned, confused. "Who's Helena? Why did she go away?" Kate took a deep breath. "She's the woman who carried you in her tummy, who brought you into the world. But then she needed to go away because she wasn't feeling well, and now she wants to meet you again." Isabel was silent for a long moment, processing the information. Then she asked with her simple, childlike logic, "But I already have a mom. You're my mom." Kate felt her eyes fill with tears. "I am, my love, and I always will be. Nothing will change that. But Helena is important too, and it will be nice for you to meet her." Isabel didn't seem very convinced, but she trusted Kate enough to agree. "Okay, if you think it's important, I'll meet her." The visit was as difficult as Kate had imagined. Helena was clearly nervous, trying to impress Isabel with expensive gifts and promises of fun outings. But Isabel, who didn't respond well to excessive stimulation or overly effusive people, became even more withdrawn. She answered Helena's questions with monosyllables, avoided eye contact, and after half an hour asked to go home. Helena was visibly frustrated, and Kate saw a shadow of impatience cross her face. The psychologist present noted everything and later explained to Helena that a slow, gradual process would be necessary, respecting Isabel's time and limits. Helena agreed, but Kate could tell she didn't really understand. She expected quick results, an instant connection that simply wasn't there. The visits continued weekly for the next few weeks, and with each visit, it became clearer that Helena was not prepared for the reality of having a child with autism. She grew impatient when Isabel didn't respond as she expected, became frustrated when the girl had a meltdown due to overstimulation, and started making comments about how Isabel should change, should behave more normally. John, who attended every visit, carefully documented everything, and the psychologist was seeing the same pattern. Helena hadn't really changed. She still saw Isabel's autism as something to be fixed, not as an integral part of who the girl was. In August, just a month before the wedding, the incident that changed everything occurred. During one of the visits, Isabel had a particularly intense meltdown because Helena had brought a toy with flashing lights and loud sounds that completely overloaded her senses. Isabel started screaming, rocking, and banging her head against the wall. The psychologist intervened immediately, turning off the toy and trying to calm the girl. But Helena, instead of showing concern or empathy, exploded. She screamed that Isabel was being dramatic, that she needed to stop acting like a baby, that this was ridiculous. John, who was just outside the room but heard everything, burst in and placed himself between Helena and Isabel. "Enough. It's over. You will not come near my daughter again." Helena tried to argue, but John was adamant. The psychologist, who had witnessed everything, agreed that her behavior was inappropriate and potentially harmful to Isabel. He pledged to include the incident in his report to the judge. Helena, realizing she had lost any chance she might have had, stormed out shouting threats and accusations. But John was not intimidated. He picked up Isabel, who was still in crisis, and carried her to the car. He called Kate on the way. "Kate, I need you. I'm bringing Isabel home. She had a bad meltdown." Kate was waiting when they arrived. She took Isabel from John's arms and carried her inside to the girls' room, where she began to apply all the techniques she knew to calm her. Rhythmic breathing, deep pressure, a soft and reassuring voice. It took over an hour, but eventually Isabel calmed down. She was exhausted, her eyes red from crying, but she finally relaxed in Kate's arms. "Mom," she whispered, using that word for the first time so naturally and unequivocally. "I don't want to see that woman again. She scares me." Kate held the girl tightly against her chest. "You don't have to see her again, my love. I promise. Your father and I will take care of everything." Isabel fell asleep shortly after, completely drained. Kate laid her in bed, covered her with her favorite blanket, and sat there, watching her sleep, feeling a mixture of relief and anger. Relief because this nightmare with Helena finally seemed to be ending, and anger because Isabel had been exposed to more unnecessary trauma because of a woman who was clearly not ready to be a mother. When she went downstairs, she found John in the living room, on the phone with his lawyer. He was reporting everything that had happened, emphasizing Helena's inappropriate reaction, and the unnecessary suffering caused to Isabel. When he finished the call, he sat on the sofa and buried his face in his hands. Kate sat next to him and hugged him. "It's going to be okay, John. The important thing is that Isabel is safe now." John lifted his face and looked at her with red eyes. "How do you do it, Kate? How do you stay so calm, so strong, even when everything is falling apart?" Kate smiled sadly. "Because someone has to be strong, and because I have you by my side. I'm not alone in this. I'll never be alone again." They held each other like that for a long time, finding comfort in one another. In the following weeks, John's lawyer worked tirelessly. With the psychologist's report documenting Helena's inappropriate behavior and John's testimony about the incident, they secured a court order suspending all visits pending a more thorough evaluation. Helena, realizing she had lost, finally gave up. She signed a document formally relinquishing her parental rights in exchange for John not suing her for child abandonment. It was an immense relief for everyone. Isabel never mentioned Helena again, and gradually, as the weeks passed, she returned to being the happy, communicative girl she was before. And then, finally, September arrived. The wedding day dawned clear and sunny, with a perfect temperature and a gentle breeze that made the leaves on the trees dance. The garden was absolutely stunning, decorated with white and pink flowers, with white chairs arranged in rows and a floral arch in the center, where the ceremony would take place. Kate woke up early, her heart pounding with nervousness and excitement. Maria entered the room with a breakfast tray and a huge smile on her face. "Good morning, bride. The big day is here." Kate smiled, feeling her eyes fill with tears of emotion. "It is. I can't believe this is happening." Maria set the tray down and hugged Kate warmly. "You deserve all this happiness, my dear. All this and so much more." The hours before the ceremony passed in a blur of preparations. Mrs. Eleanor arrived early to help dress Isabel and Sophia. The two girls looked adorable in their white dresses with pink details. Isabel was exceptionally calm and happy, clearly understanding the importance of the day. Sophia, meanwhile, was fascinated by her own reflection in the mirror, twirling to see her dress spin. Kate was the last to get ready. Her dress was simple but elegant, a creamy white that enhanced her warm skin tone. Maria helped with her hair, pinning it into a low bun with a few loose tendrils framing her face. A delicate veil completed the look, along with the bouquet of white roses John had specially ordered. When Kate came downstairs and saw the garden full of people, her heart almost stopped. There were only about 30 guests, close and dear people, but to her it felt like a crowd. Maria was in the front row with Mrs. Eleanor. A few of John's work colleagues were also present, and there at the front, under the floral arch, was John, impeccable in his light grey suit, his eyes fixed on the garden entrance, waiting for her. Isabel and Sophia walked ahead, scattering rose petals, drawing smiles and adorable comments from the guests. And then it was Kate's turn. She walked alone with no one to give her away because she was giving herself, of her own free will, by choice, for love. When she reached the altar and took John's hands, she saw tears streaming down his face. The officiant began the ceremony, speaking of love, commitment, family. But Kate barely heard the words. She was completely focused on John, on his eyes, his smile, the way he squeezed her hands as if he would never let go. When it was time for the vows, John went first. His voice was thick with emotion. "Kate, when you came into my life, I was lost. I was trapped in a cycle of pain and loneliness, thinking it would never be possible to be happy again. But you showed me that there is always hope. You brought light into my home, love to my daughter, and peace to my heart. I promise to love you every day of my life, in good times and bad, in joy and sorrow. I promise to be your partner, your companion, your safe harbor, and I promise to honor every day the gift you gave me by agreeing to be part of this family." It was Kate's turn. She took a deep breath, trying to control the tears that threatened to fall. "John, less than a year ago, I was on the streets, with no prospects, no hope. And then, on a Christmas night, I met a special little girl who changed my life forever. And through her I met you. You gave me so much more than a roof over my head or food on the table. You gave me a family. You gave me purpose. You gave me love. And I promise to never take that for granted. I promise to care for you and Isabel with all my love every single day. I promise to be the wife, the mother, the partner you deserve. I promise that no matter what happens, we will face it together, because we are a family, and families stick together. The officiant declared them husband and wife, and John pulled Kate into an emotional kiss as the guests applauded and cried. Isabel ran and hugged both of their legs, and John picked her up, including her in the embrace. Sophia, who was in Mrs. Eleanor's arms, reached out her little arms, wanting to be part of it too. And there, under the floral arch, with the autumn sun shining down on them, the family was finally complete. United not just by legal documents, but by something much stronger: love, choice, commitment. The reception that followed was joyful and relaxed. There was music, dancing, delicious food prepared by Maria, and many happy tears. Isabel wouldn't leave Kate's side, calling her Mom every few minutes, as if to make sure this was real, that it wasn't a dream. That night, after everyone had gone home and the girls were asleep, John and Kate stood alone in the garden, watching the stars. Kate rested her head on John's shoulder and sighed contentedly. It was a perfect day. John kissed the top of her head. It was more than perfect. It was the beginning of our life together. Kate smiled. You know, sometimes I still can't believe how my life has changed. A year ago, I was sleeping on a park bench with Sophia in my arms, not knowing what would become of us. And now I'm here, married to a wonderful man, mother to 2 incredible girls, with a real family. It's almost surreal. John hugged her tighter. It's not surreal, it's real. It's the life you always deserved. And that, thank God, you found. Or rather, that found us. Because without you, Isabel and I would be lost too. They stayed there for a while longer, just enjoying the peace of that moment, the certainty that they had each other, that they had a family, that they had a future ahead of them. And Kate, looking up at the stars, made a silent promise. I promise I will cherish every day, every moment, every smile. I promise I will be the best mother I can be to Isabel and Sophia. I promise I will love John with everything I have. And I promise I will never ever forget where I came from and how far I've come. Because it is these memories, these scars, these overcome challenges that made her who she is today. A survivor, a fighter, a mother, a wife, a complete woman, finally at peace with herself and the world around her. The following months and years brought their own joys and challenges. Isabel continued to progress in her development, becoming more confident and communicative. Each day, Sophia grew up fast, becoming a smart and talkative little girl who adored her older sister and followed her everywhere. John expanded his business, but always made sure to maintain a balance between work and family. And Kate discovered a new passion. She began to study special education, wanting to learn more about autism and how to help not only Isabel but other children as well. With John's support, she went back to school, took courses, attended workshops, and eventually began working as a consultant for families with autistic children, sharing her experience and knowledge. The house on Saint-Hyacinthe, the Upper East Side, filled with life, with laughter, with love. Maria remained a part of the family, being the surrogate grandmother the girls adored. Mrs. Eleanor visited regularly, proud of the family her son had built, and every Christmas, when it was time to decorate the tree, Kate couldn't help but cry as she remembered that first night, when it all began. When a young, homeless mother decided to extend a hand to a lonely little girl in a garden, having no idea that this small act of kindness would change not only her destiny, but the destiny of everyone around her. Because in the end, that's what love does. It transforms, it heals, it builds bridges where there were only chasms, and it reminds us that no matter how dark the night, there is always hope for a new dawn.